This is the Jet 1024 lathe, and I've just taken apart the gear and the change gear portion, cleaned up all the gears. The lathe is 1981. It was one owner who hardly used it. It's in beautiful condition, but all the grease and everything on the change wheels and oil, so it's all been cleaned, scrubbed, cleaned, and re-oiled. And same with the gearbox. I had the gearbox front taken off. I cleaned all the old gears and all the old oil and grease off of it, and put new oil. I used transmission oil in that. Well, the lathe is just about ready to go. As you can see, this is the motor for it, and it's ready to be mounted. I'm not going to mount it while I put the lathe onto its permanent stand at this point. You can see the quick change gearbox and the headstock end with the change gears is all being really cleaned with old dried out grease. I've had the quick change gearbox all apart, and it's been totally cleaned, not rebuilt, but totally cleaned. I had it all apart and just cleaned it. It was a pretty good condition. The rest of the lathe is in ideal condition. It's all been cleaned. I did not take apart the carriage, but I did take apart the cross slide and the top slide, and that has all been totally cleaned as well. So I'm just getting ready to lift the lathe off of this bench and clean the feet under it, and I'll be putting it on the new bench. This is a picture of the new table that I built for the lathe, and it's about 28 inches deep. It's a little over 5 feet, I think 5 feet 6 inches long, and 39 inches high, but it's on wheels which take up about another 6 inches. The wheels are just for moving around only, and they actually in fact can be will be removed when the lathe is in the right spot. It is, like I say, built out of 2-inch by 2-inch steel tubing, and it's got sliding drawers that haven't been made yet. I have to make the drawers yet, and this is what the lathe is going to be moved on to. You can see the lathe on the wooden table in the background. Okay, the lift is hooked up, as you can see, and I'm going to be raising the unit shortly and removing the table. I just want to bring something to anybody's attention. If you've got a Jet lathe, 10 by 24 lathe, this I understand is the proper method to hold the lathe for lifting with the crane, and this is the way I've done it all the time since I've owned it. There is one caution though, and that is down in this area here. This particular shaft here, which is keyed and runs the turning and the automatic cross feed. If I were to have this steel I-beam directly mounted underneath the bed and come across, I would bend that bar. That bar is just a little too low, so in order to compensate, I've had to put this half-inch chunk of plywood in there. I hope you can see that okay, but that's the way it has to be clamped. And this gives a good sturdy method of holding on to the lathe, and I can adjust the balance of it by the tailstock and the cross slide. Okay, some changes have been made. This is the table the existing lathe is mounted on right now, and I've indicated the other table. The other table height, and it's on wheels as you can see, but the height isn't very high. So in order for me to get the crane underneath, that particular table only has 6 inches of height available to it. So, and this one here, as you can see, it's blocked up in order to get the legs of the engine hoist under it. So what I've done, because I can get the lathe off of this table, because being blocked up, that's easy. However, to block up the other table would be quite difficult. So what I've decided to do is take the rollers, the casters off of this one, off of this, and I'm going to use a block and tackle to lower the lathe, I found that you don't have as much control as on the hydraulic jack on the engine hoist to lower it. Sometimes it's okay and sometimes it goes down with a bang. So I want to lower it a little bit more gently and get it more accurately. So I've opted to put the chain hoist on. And this is going to be an interesting exercise. But taking the wheels off of this one, I can move the existing wood table out of the way and move the new table underneath it without having to worry about jacking up the new table as well. Well, there it is. It's finished. It's mounted on the lathe, and the lathe is mounted on the table. And as I was mentioning, the legs that you see down below, they are just held on there, just with the cross member bolts that you can see through there. And they will then come off when I'm ready to put the lathe in its final location. Also of interest is, I don't know how good it will come out in here, but you can see some angle iron on that end, and there's matching angle iron on this end. And what that angle iron is for is there'll be cement, 24 inch by 24 inch by 2 inch cement slabs put in there to keep the lathe mounted and down on the floor. And there'll also be some rubber feet put on that will be adjustable. And the intent there is that I want some center of gravity, and the cement slabs will keep the lathe down low. Okay, this is another picture of the jet lathe, and it's sitting on its stand. I'm getting ready to mount the motor. Now for the motor, where it is located and where it mounts, you can see the V-belt coming down. You can see the bracket in here where the motor will mount to, and I hope that it's in focus. And one thing about the jet lathe, and it's either the 10 by 24 or the 12 by 36, is that the motor mounts underneath the pulleys, etc., for the speed change. Unfortunately, one thing that happens that I don't like is that there's an opening up here, and you can see it up in this area, and where right above the motor. And so when you oil all the pulleys, etc., all of a sudden you get a bunch of this oil will be coming down on top of the motor. And I'm using a totally enclosed fan-cooled motor, so it won't really make much difference, except I don't like the look of it. Okay, here's a picture of the motor, and you can see it's a 3-phase Baldor 208 motor, 1 horsepower. This green item is the mounting plate, and you can see from the mounting plate the lugs in the bottom here and here mount onto the lathe, and it pivots on that point and hangs by the V-belt. The bracket on this end here helps to keep it stable, and it bolts onto the lathe at a certain location as well. So you can imagine that underneath where the V-belts are and where it's oily and grubby, all the material that will be falling on top of the motor.